Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time seeing any of my reviews, welcome. And we're going to talk about Den of Thieves today. So if you haven't already, go ahead and just click subscribe to my channel. You get more of my movie reviews, and go ahead and click the notification bell so that you get notified anytime I upload a new video. There's going to be ones coming at least weekly because that's how often I go to the movies. I go to a lot. And then like this video if you like it. I have been really enjoying lately people leaving comments in my videos and voicing their opinions. Whether they're agreeing with me, disagreeing with me, I'm enjoying this immensely. So if you have an opinion on this film or anything else that you've seen reviews I've done, then go ahead and leave it in the comments and let's have a conversation about it. I love that so much. Okay, so Den of Thieves. I just came out of the theater not too long ago. It is very fresh in my head. I got a lot of thoughts about it. Before I get into that, let me just go ahead and break down the movie for you a little bit, just sort of the, facts. So we got basically two sides. You got Team Thief and you got Team Cop. So on Team Thief, you have Pablo Schreiber, you got O'Shea Jackson Jr., Curtis Jackson, aka 50 Cent, and also Evan Jones and Cooper Andrews. Then on the Team Cop side, you have Gerard Butler, and then also some other actors who aren't so well known. You have Maurice Compte and Mo McRae, among others. So Den of Thieves is about a group of thieves who are planning to do a heist on the Federal Reserve building in Los Angeles. And then the cops, Gerard Butler, are the ones who were like on their tail and have this whole cat and mouse game going on. Your basic cops and robbers story, I suppose. I think they should have called this movie Thickums, because every dude in this movie was like on swole. Some of them in a muscular way, some of them in a not so muscular way. This is a body positive channel. I'm not shaming anybody. I'm just making observations. And another part of this movie, this movie was like a film version of the map of the greater Los Angeles area, and was kind of interesting to me at first because I used to live there. So I grew up in Long Beach. I lived in Hawthorne for a time. I'm very familiar with all that area. And so it was kind of interesting to see like, oh, I lived over there, or I lived down the street from there, or I used to work in that city, or, I got lost in that area one time. So it kind of brought up a lot of things for me. Most people in this country don't live in the LA area, so they're probably not going to have that kind of a connection with the film for it doing that. But then after a while, it started to get a little tedious. It was just naming every single place that they were. They just had to tell you where it was. Yeah, it just didn't really seem to matter that, one scene they're in Rolling Hills Estates, and the other scenes they're in Wilmington, or they're in Hawthorne or Gardena. It just didn't really seem to make a difference that the audience needed to know the very specific city where they were. Especially for people who probably never been to California and aren't familiar with the LA area, you don't know where Gardena is in relation to Wilmington. So why does it matter to you? I'm guessing it does not. As far as the acting goes in this movie, I don't have anything to complain about as far as the acting goes. Everybody was pretty solid, pretty good. It was really good to see Gerard Butler in not a rom-com type of movie, and also not in some of those, I think he was in the London is Falling. The ones with the White House Down, which it was good to see him in not something like that, and not a rom-com. It was really good to see him be a little, grungy and dirty. That was nice. So I was happy to see that. Now, some of the problems that I feel like this movie had. So I was going into thinking that this was going to be a very high energy, high paced heist film, and that isn't really what you got. There was some action in the beginning, and then there was like the heist pretty much at the end, and then everything in between was kind of slow. And I've heard some comparisons to Heat, and I can see how the people who made this film may have been influenced by Heat. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that is a movie that was made kind of back in the day, maybe like 20 or so years ago, with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino as the leads. It was a similar type story, and it was a really good movie. It is a good movie. So I feel like there are some comparisons to Heat here, and that there might have been some influence by Heat, but I don't think it did it as well. If it's going to be slow, if the pacing is going to be slow, you got to have something really interesting going on in there. And I feel like there were some missed opportunities to really get into the characters and the relationships and get to a point where I actually cared about them and understood what their motivations were. But as far as character development, it was pretty shallow. As far as story, the story was pretty shallow. There wasn't really a lot to go on with that. So if we're comparing it to Heat, Heat did a much better job at development than this movie did. So the one thought that popped into my head while I was watching this is that women are pretty much props in this movie. The one female character that had the most depth to her would be Gerard Butler's wife. But really, she was only there just to show that Gerard Butler's home life is a mess. And, you know, who'd have thunk a alcoholic cop with impulse control has issues at home? Do tell. So there really wasn't anything good for any female characters in this movie. I think there were just some thrown in there just to show you that women exist. This is pretty much a boys club kind of movie, and the whole thing centered around dudes. So one thing I did find interesting about the ending, and I'm not going to tell you what the ending is, there is no spoiler talk here yet, but it was interesting because the ending was like the ending of Heat and also the ending of The Usual Suspects. Like, it had both those endings, and which I found kind of weird. I feel like they could have picked one or the other. They didn't have to cram both of them in there, really. Now, I normally do not do spoilers in my reviews, but I just have to talk about some of these points with somebody. So if you don't want this movie spoiled for you, you can go ahead and exit the theater right now. We'll wait. Okay, you're still around, so you want to hear what I got to say about some of these points of the spoilers. All right, so there was a point where Gerard Butler, he has got O'Shea Jackson Jr. and he is going to, put the screws to him to try to figure out what's going on with this band because he wants to bust them all. So they have some conversation to themselves. Then later, they follow the whole gang to this restaurant, and Gerard Butler strolls up there and then basically just blows up the spot to make it obvious to the rest of the crew that Gerard Butler is a cop. Like, he didn't say it, but it was very obvious that he was, and that he had already had some previous conversation with O'Shea Jackson Jr. So now everybody's like, oh, so you're snitching on us now? And it just didn't make any sense, like, why Gerard Butler would go in there and blow up the spot when he needs this guy to play them so he can eventually bust them. But if he puts them out there like that, now they don't trust him. And so what was the point of that? Now, I was like, okay, let me just step back. Maybe there is some bigger end game here. But really up to that point, it wasn't like a whole bunch of intellectual jujitsu that was happening. So I didn't see it being like a point of manipulation. It just seemed like Gerard Butler was just being an asshole, which is basically what his character is just like this obnoxious asshole that goes around and like just likes to piss people off and just likes to be provocative for seemingly no reason. So there's this part where the heist is kind of over, they just finished, and the cops are sort of on the crew's tail, and then they're now stuck in this traffic, the infamous LA traffic. Everything you've heard about LA traffic is so true. It's awful. So anyway, they get stuck into this traffic and they see the crew, maybe about like a quarter mile ahead of them, and it's just bumper to bumper traffic. I found it hard to believe that the cops in that situation would engage armed suspects. Everybody's got these assault rifles, that they would engage these dudes when there's like tons of civilians in between the both of them. It didn't make any sense, especially in the beginning when they're talking about these guys and they said that they don't kill civilians, they kill officers. So the thieves would not have been the ones who started it, and they weren't the ones who started it. The cops started the firefight. So to me, it was like, it didn't make any sense that cops would do that. Of course, this is a movie. They wanted to have a really cool shootout scene, and so this is what that scene was there for. But I was just like, really, like, I could be sitting in traffic and cops are gonna just find me expendable just so they can get some dudes that stole some money? Like, it didn't make any sense. I'm sorry, I'm being a little nitpicky. Maybe I am, but that just kind of like, it didn't sit well. It didn't sit well. Also, kind of another thing that I was like, what is going on here? There was a whole lot of this, like, ¿Quién es más macho? Like, dick measuring competition between Pablo Schreiber and Gerard Butler, and where they would just kind of like shoot guns at a shooting range and then look at each other. There was a whole lot of these very silent confrontations where each of them are sizing each other up, trying to establish their dominance. Like, who's trying to be the alpha dog. I don't think it was done well. And I did mention this earlier about the ending, but we'll go into a little bit more details because now we're in the spoiler portion of our program. So like I said, there was this ending that was very much like Heat, where the cop and the thieves are out sort of in the middle of nowhere, sort of in this like abandoned or like not populated area, and there's this pursuit on foot, which ends up in this very, one-on-one firefight, and then the thief dies. I want to go back and watch Heat because I feel like, oh, this is probably like a frame for frame like copy of Heat. Like that was how Heat ended. Yeah, so I felt like that ending was so much like Heat that it was almost like bordering on plagiarism. And like I mentioned before, there was this other Usual Suspects type ending. And when I say there are two different endings, I don't mean that there was like an ending and then an alternate ending that they showed after the credits or something. It was like this was just how the movie proceeded to end. So there was this other Usual Suspects type ending where Gerard Butler is looking around and he's having a very Kaiser Soze moment in the that Chaz Palminteri had in The Usual Suspects, where he's looking at things and he's putting it together and he's like, oh my God, the guy that I thought was the runt of the group is actually the leader. I don't know. I'm just like, yo, been there, done that. This has already been, not only has it already been done, it's been done really well. Just leave it alone. The theater where I was at, people were very vocal in certain parts, like they were really getting into it and enjoying it. I don't know if that's how it's going to be like across the board, if I'm just like the weirdo who didn't like it and then everybody is. But then I was kind of realizing like, oh, I'm hearing the same person just like shouting shit out all the time. So maybe I was just her. But then there was like guys in my row that were like, yeah, in some parts. So I don't know. Listen, I wouldn't recommend this movie to anybody, honestly. If you are a big fan of 50 Cent, of O'Shea Jackson Jr., which, by the way, he is a very handsome man. I have had the biggest crush on that boy since watching Straight Outta Compton. He's very cute. That is neither here nor there. So if you are big fans of any of these guys in this movie and you want to go out and support, all power to you. Do your thing. I do the same thing with my favorite actors. But if you really don't have a horse in this race and you want to go see a movie that's going to entertain you, I honestly cannot recommend this movie, really. I think that you're better off just rewatching one of your favorite heist movies. Also, I would say, since there are so many comparisons to Heat, and then also they kind of bit off of The Usual Suspects, if you have not seen either of those movies, or you haven't seen it in a while, go back and watch those movies. They're good. This one, meh. So that is my quite lengthy, I'm pretty sure, review for Den of Thieves. I hope that you enjoyed it. Again, if you like this video, go ahead and give me a like. If you have different opinions about it, or you want to be like, yeah, I feel you on this, put it in the comments below and I will totally answer back. Also, go ahead and hit subscribe if you haven't already. I asked you at the beginning of the video and you haven't done it yet. Could you please? And then also hit the notification bell so that you get all of my videos when I upload them. So thank you very much, my friends, and I will see you on the next one.